It's a Sunday afternoon in Ohio. A 47-year-old man is sitting in his living room, beer in hand, watching the final 2 minutes of a playoff game. His team is up by 3, then an interception, a pick six, game over. 20 minutes later, he's in the back of an ambulance, clutching his chest. The doctors will later confirm it. No heart defect, no prior condition. Just a massive spike in cortisol and adrenaline, triggered by nothing more than watching strangers in helmets lose a football game 300 miles away. This isn't an isolated story. It's documented. Cardiologists have a name for the spike in heart attacks that follows a devastating loss by the local team. Emergency rooms actually prepare for it. Now, if that sounds insane to you, a man's heart nearly stopping because of a game he wasn't even playing in, you're not alone. If you described this behavior to an alien visiting Earth, they'd assume humans had lost their minds. Grown adults sobbing on their knees. Grown men punching holes through drywall. A man wearing the same unwashed, stained jersey every single Sunday for 5 years, terrified that if he throws it in the wash, a group of men he's never met will lose a game hundreds of miles away. It sounds completely irrational, but it's not. If you've ever felt your chest tighten during a fourth-quarter collapse, if you've ever snapped at your spouse after a loss you had absolutely no control over, you are not broken, and you are not overreacting. You are experiencing one of the most powerful, hardwired forces in human psychology, a force so strong it can genuinely put your body into a state of physical danger. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the neuroscience, the evolutionary biology, and the hidden psychological traps that hijack the mind of a die-hard sports fan. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why losing can cause real, measurable physical pain, and why, no matter how much heartbreak your team puts you through, you can never just pick another team. To understand why a football game can put a man in the hospital, we have to go back, not 10 years, not 100. We have to go back roughly 200,000 years, to a time before cities, before nations, before laws, when the only thing standing between a human being and death was the tribe. For the vast majority of human history, being part of a group wasn't a nice to have. It was the entire game. If you were cast out of your tribe, if you were left to fend for yourself in the wilderness, your odds of surviving the next winter were essentially zero. No weapons factory, no grocery store, no 9/11. Just you, alone, against nature. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer societies have found that solitary survival was so rare it was barely a category worth studying. The tribe was the difference between life and death. So evolution did what it always does. It built a brain, obsessed with solving that problem, and it solved it by wiring us with a desperate, non-negotiable need to belong. Your brain, right now, today, is constantly scanning the room, asking one ancient question: who are my people? Here's the problem. We don't hunt woolly mammoths anymore. We don't need a tribe to fend off wolves. But the brain never got the memo. It's still running that same 200,000-year-old survival software. It just needed a new target. Today, that target looks like political parties. It looks like religious congregations. And for hundreds of millions of Americans, it looks like a laundry logo stitched onto a jersey. This is where a psychologist named Henri Tajfel comes in. In the 1970s, Tajfel developed something called social identity theory, and it explains something remarkable. A huge part of your sense of who you are is built not from your individual traits, but from the groups you belong to. And Tajfel didn't just theorize this, he tested it. In what's now called the minimal group paradigm, he split total strangers into groups, using something as meaningless as a coin flip. No shared history, no shared values, nothing. And within minutes, people started favoring their randomly assigned group and treating the other group with suspicion. If a coin flip is enough to trigger tribal loyalty, imagine what a lifetime of shared colors, chants, and Sunday rituals can do. This is why your brain performs a strange trick the moment you see your team's logo. In a matter of milliseconds, before you've even consciously registered it, your brain sorts the world into us and them. That's not a metaphor, That's self-categorization, happening automatically, every single time. And nowhere is this more visible than in American college football. Think about it. A 50-year-old alumnus who graduated 2 decades ago, or someone who never set foot on that campus at all, will scream, cry, and lose sleep over 18-year-olds he's never met, representing a school that has no idea he exists. He didn't choose this rationally. His ancient brain simply found a tribe, painted on the colors and declared, "These are my people now." So when someone tells you I'm a Packers fan, or I bleed Dodger blue, they are not describing a hobby. To the oldest part of their brain, they are making a survival declaration. And once that declaration is made, something even stranger happens. Your brain stops watching the game as an outside observer and starts living it as if it were happening to you. That's exactly where we're headed next. So your brain has already decided this team is your tribe. Now let's talk about what happens inside your skull the moment they score. When your team hits a walk-off home run or throws a game-winning touchdown, your brain does something remarkable. It stops processing the event as entertainment. Neuroscientists have put die-hard fans into fMRI machines and watched their brains light up in real time during big plays. What they found is that watching your team succeed triggers massive activity in the ventral striatum and the nucleus accumbens, the exact same dopamine-soaked reward circuitry that fires when you personally land a huge promotion, win money, or fall in love. Read that again. Your brain does not meaningfully distinguish between "I achieved something" and "the people wearing my team's colors achieved something." As far as your neurochemistry is concerned, a Hail Mary catch by a stranger you'll never meet feels chemically like your own personal triumph. That's why a big win can leave you floating through Monday at work, grinning for no obvious reason, feeling almost superhuman. And this isn't just a brain scan curiosity, it shows up in your actual biology. In a landmark 1998 study, researcher Paul Bernhardt measured testosterone levels in male fans before and after watching their team compete. The results were staggering. When their team won, fans' testosterone spiked, the same hormonal response you'd expect from a warrior after a real physical victory. When their team lost, testosterone dropped. Your body isn't watching a game, your body is fighting a battle, and it adjusts your hormones as if the outcome determines your actual social rank. This is also why close, nail-biting games are so much more addictive than easy blowout wins. When the outcome is uncertain until the last second, your brain releases dopamine in unpredictable bursts, the exact same mechanism that makes slot machines so compulsively addictive. A guaranteed win feels good. An uncertain win that could go either way, right up until the final whistle, is the thing your brain can't stop chasing. But here's the part nobody warns you about. What goes up must come down. And this is where we return to that man in the ambulance. When your team is humiliated, your body doesn't process it as an entertainment product underperformed. Your amygdala and your stress response system treat it as a genuine threat. Cortisol floods your bloodstream, your heart rate climbs, your blood pressure spikes. This is your ancient nervous system, reacting exactly as it would if your actual tribe had just been overrun by a rival clan. Because as far as that primitive machinery is concerned, that's precisely what happened. And this is where we can finally answer the question from the very beginning of this video. How does watching a game cause real physical pain? Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger discovered something extraordinary about the human brain. The anterior cingulate cortex, a region that processes physical pain, like a burn or a broken bone, is the same region that activates during social rejection and failure. In other words, your brain does not have a separate filing system for physical pain and the pain of my tribe losing. It's the same circuit. That gut punch feeling after a devastating loss isn't a metaphor. It is neurologically a form of real pain. Now stack cortisol, spiked blood pressure, and activated pain circuitry on top of an existing heart condition, or an already stressful week, and suddenly that ambulance story from the opening doesn't sound so extreme anymore. There's a name for the emotional whiplash of all this. Psychologist Robert Cialdini called it Basking in Reflected Glory, BIRG for short, describing how fans bask in their team's success as if it were their own. The theory also predicts the opposite, cutting off reflected failure, or CORF, where fans should psychologically distance themselves from a losing team to protect their ego. Here's the tragic twist. True die-hard fans can't actually do this. The theory says they should cut and run, but identity doesn't work like a light switch. They stay. They absorb the failure into themselves, week after week, season after season, because by now, the team isn't something they support, it's something they've become. So if being a fan of a losing team causes real physical pain, cortisol spikes, activated pain circuits, hormonal crashes, the obvious question is, why not just quit? Why not switch to a team that actually wins? Because for most die-hard fans, this was never a choice to begin with. It's a bloodline. Think about how you actually became a fan. Chances are, you didn't sit down as a rational adult and compare win-loss records before picking a team. Your father put a tiny jersey on you before you could walk. Your grandfather drove you 3 hours to a freezing stadium when you were 7 years old, and you remember the smell of the hot dogs and the roar of 40,000 strangers more clearly than you remember most of your actual childhood. That first high five with your dad after a touchdown isn't a sports memory. It's a family memory. It's stitched into the same part of your brain that holds your happiest holidays. To walk away from that team now, in the middle of a losing season, doesn't feel like a smart consumer decision. It feels like betraying your own past. Psychologists call part of this the sunk cost fallacy. You've already invested decades of Sundays, heartbreak, and identity into this team, so walking away now feels like erasing all of it. Combine that with generational loyalty, and you get something stronger than a preference. You get an inheritance you never signed up for, but would never give back. And because so much of this is completely outside your control, you can't call a timeout. You can't sub in a better quarterback. The human brain does something fascinating to cope with that helplessness. It invents rituals. The same lucky socks, the exact same seat on the couch, a specific meal, eaten at a specific time, before every single kickoff. Fans know, logically, their socks have zero effect on a game happening 500 miles away. And they do it anyway, every single week. Psychologists call this the illusion of control. When we're placed in a high-stakes situation where we have zero actual power, the brain manufactures small rituals to lower anxiety. It's the identical mechanism behind pre-flight rituals in pilots and pre-surgery routines in surgeons. It doesn't change the outcome. It just tricks the nervous system into feeling safe. But there's a darker side to all this tribal wiring, and it's time we talk about it honestly. The moment your identity gets fused to an us, your brain automatically manufactures a them to compare it against, and to make the us feel superior, the them has to be devalued. This is called hostile attribution bias, and you've absolutely seen it in action. A player on your team delivers a brutal, bone-rattling hit, and your brain instantly rationalizes it. He was just playing hard. The ref made a bad call. The exact same hit, from a player on the rival team, and suddenly, he's a dirty, malicious cheater who's ruining the sport. Same action, same physics, completely different verdict. Because your brain isn't judging the play, it's protecting the tribe. Taken to its extreme, this tribal wiring produces something psychologists call de-individuation. Wrap thousands of ordinarily peaceful people, accountants, teachers, nurses, in identical colors, pack them into a roaring, anonymous crowd, and something happens to personal responsibility. It starts to dissolve. This is how normal, law-abiding fans end up flipping cars and setting fires in the streets after a championship, win or lose. The individual doesn't disappear because these people are secretly violent. They disappear because the crowd offers anonymity, and anonymity quietly switches off the internal brakes we rely on every other day of our lives. And in 2026, this tribalism has a far more dangerous amplifier than any stadium crowd: your phone. Athletes now routinely wake up to death threats in their DMs after missing a game-winning field goal, not from rival fans, but from their own team's supporters, furious over a blown parlay. Because sports betting is now legal in the majority of US states, millions of fans aren't just emotionally invested in a win anymore. They have actual money riding on individual plays, individual players, individual seconds of a game. That combination, ancient tribal wiring, plus real financial stakes, plus the anonymity of a comment section, is producing a level of fan hostility that didn't exist a generation ago. We've built the most emotionally combustible fandom in human history, and it's happening in your pocket, every single Sunday. Here's an uncomfortable question worth sitting with. Does the team actually love you back? Because while you're inheriting jerseys from your grandfather and building your identity around a laundry logo, the franchise is running a business. And that business has shown, time and again, that loyalty is a one-way street. Teams that have called a city home for 50, 60, 70 years, with 3 generations of season ticket holders, have packed up and moved to a new market the moment a better stadium deal came along. Fans who devoted their entire emotional lives to that team were left standing in an empty parking lot, still wearing the jersey, with nowhere left to wear it. And even without relocation, ticket prices climb every single year. Concessions cost more than a family dinner, and the same organizations happily sell you a new alternate jersey every season, fully aware that your loyalty isn't going anywhere, no matter how much they charge for it. There's also a quieter, more personal version of this one-sided bond. Psychologists call it a parasocial relationship, the same phenomenon that makes people feel genuinely close to a podcast host or a YouTuber they've never met. Fans build real emotional attachments to specific players and coaches. They defend them online. They feel personally hurt when that player is traded. And that player, in almost every case, has no idea this person exists. It's a relationship with all the emotional weight of a real one, held up entirely on one side. So here's the paradox we're left with. This whole system can hurt you physically, get exploited financially, and never love you back the way you love it. And yet, on Sunday, you'll still be there. So will millions of others. Why? Because modern life doesn't give you very many places to actually feel anything. Think about how controlled you're required to be, every single day. You have to stay composed in a work meeting, even when you're furious. You have to be polite to the customer who's clearly wrong. You have to sit calmly in traffic, swallow your frustration, keep your face neutral in line at the grocery store. Adult life, for most people, is an ongoing exercise in suppression. A stadium, or even your own living room on a Sunday afternoon, is one of the last socially acceptable places left where none of that applies. You can scream at the top of your lungs at a television. You can cry, openly, in front of people you love, and nobody will ask if you're okay. You can hug a total stranger sitting next to you because your team just scored, and it will feel completely normal. This is catharsis, a full, sanctioned release of everything you've been holding in all week. There are very few remaining rituals in modern life that give people permission to feel that much, that openly, together. And underneath the catharsis is something even more valuable: belonging. A sports season gives your year a rhythm, something to look forward to every single week, rain or shine. For someone who just moved to a new city and doesn't know a soul, putting on that jersey and walking into a sports bar makes them an instant member of a community, no small talk required. For someone who struggles to connect with people in most areas of life, a shared team gives them an easy, built-in reason to talk to a stranger. So maybe the franchise doesn't love you back. Maybe the business side of this will always be one-sided. But the community it creates around you, the friend you made in the stands, the tradition with your dad, the stranger who hugged you after a walk-off win, that part is real. That part was never about the team at all. It was always about connection. So let's go back to that man in the ambulance for a second. He wasn't weak. He wasn't overreacting. His brain was doing exactly what 200,000 years of evolution trained it to do, treating his team's identity as his own survival. The dopamine, the cortisol, the testosterone swings, the rituals, the rage at the rival team, none of that makes you irrational. It makes you human, running very old software in a very modern world. But understanding this software gives you something powerful, the ability to use it without letting it use you. So here are 3 things worth carrying into your next game day. First, when you feel that cortisol spike after a brutal loss, the tight chest, the short temper, pause before you snap at your spouse or your kids. That surge is real, but it's not about them. Name it for what it is, and let it pass through you instead of onto them. Second, try to gently separate your own worth from your team's scoreboard. Your value as a person didn't drop because a kicker missed a field goal. Third, whenever you can, point that tribal energy toward connection instead of hostility. The friend in the stands, not the stranger in the comments section wearing the wrong colors. Because at the end of the day, you were never really cheering for a piece of leather crossing a painted line. You were cheering for your dad sitting next to you, for the stranger who hugged you after the winning score, for a Sunday that gave your whole week a reason to look forward to something. You were cheering for the feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself, and that feeling is worth protecting, even from the game itself. So the next time your team loses and you feel that pit in your stomach, remember, you're not crazy, you're just human. If this video helped you understand yourself, or the die-hard fan in your life, a little better, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. And I want to hear from you. What's the single most irrational thing you've ever done as a fan? Drop it in the comments below. See you in the next one. Thank you for watching.